There's a question on the minds of many this year, a question that demands we pierce through layers of geopolitics, ideology, and uncomfortable truths. Why are both the United States and China, rivals in almost every domain, converging in silent strategic support for Pakistan over India in 2025? It's not a coincidence, it's not incompetence, it's calculated, and it's dangerous. Let's not begin with propaganda or sentimentality. Let's begin with the brutal realities of power, because international relations aren't driven by morality. They're driven by utility, necessity, and survival, and both Washington and Beijing see Pakistan not as an ally of principle, but as a lever, a fulcrum, a pressure point against a rising India that refuses to bow. The rise of India is perceived not just as economic growth, but as a profound seismic shift in global power structures that shakes the very foundations of established world order. When a nation as vast and ancient as India begins to assert itself on the world stage, it sends a ripple of anxiety through those who have long dominated the geopolitical landscape. This is not mere fear of competition. It is fear of displacement. The fear that an emerging power will overturn decades of carefully maintained control and influence. India's ascent threatens to dismantle the unipolar world that America once ruled with near absolute dominance. This threatens the carefully constructed balance that China itself is wary to disturb, because an empower and supreme challenges us, not so Beijing's implicit invitation to become the uncontested leader, to become the unconsenterer, the West basis of the creator. The United States and China, despite their rivalry, share an unspoken understanding that an unchecked India is a danger to their own strategic calculations. Their convergence around Pakistan is a direct response to this threat. India's economy, growing at a rate that outpaces many developed nations, fuels a military modernization that no longer accepts a subordinate role in Asia. This military buildup is not symbolic. It is a clear message to the world that India will no longer be marginalized. This threatens the regional balance of power and raises uncomfortable questions for both Washington and South Asia about their future influence in South Asia. The fear is not only military, but also ideological. And India's technological model to ethno-literal resilium offer an all-vast Western liberalism, and Chinese a Western authoritarianism, in Korean, and artuation and water and warder and servant the warmintful rallets. Both superpowers recognize that an India confident in its identity and power undermines narratives of global governance and order. Thus, they seek to curb India's ambitions not through open confrontation, but by shoring up its adversary, Pakistan. The history of geopolitics teaches us that rising powers are often met with containment strategies. The United States' Cold War approach to the Soviet Union is a prime example. Just as Washington once sought to encircle and contain the USSR through alliances and proxy states, it now perceives India through a similar lens. However, the containment strategy has evolved into a more complex game of indirect influence. Pakistan is the ideal proxy. It offers a geographical and political wedge to slow India's momentum. It is a source of pressure that forces India to divert resources and attention to its western border, thereby distracting it from pursuing its ambitions elsewhere. America's support of Pakistan is therefore less about alliance and more about strategic expediency, a tool to check India's regional and global rise without direct confrontation. An illustrative example lies in the 22-1 conflict in the Kashmir region. The U.S. response was muted, deliberately ambiguous, reflecting a cautious balance. India's decisive moves in Kashmir demonstrated its willingness to assert control over disputed territories, unsettling Pakistan and its backers. Washington's limited reaction signaled a tacit acceptance of Pakistan's role as a counterbalance to India's assertiveness. Instead of condemning Pakistan's actions, the U.S. maintained a strategic silence that implicitly supported Pakistan's position as a thorn in India's side. This diplomatic posture history revealed the underlying calculation, keeping India restrained by sustaining Pakistan's influence. It was a clear demonstration of how great powers manage emerging threats, not by direct confrontations, but through proxy actors. China's calculations mirror, though from a different vantage point. Beijing is deeply concerned that India's growth will cut into its Belt and Road Initiative ambitions and threaten its own regional supremacy. The border clashes between China and India in the Himalayas in 2020 reaffirmed the reality of this strategic competition. Supporting Pakistan, China's longtime ally, provides a buffer zone against Indian expansion and asserts pressure along its contested borders. It's a classic example of using a weaker but strategically located partner to apply pressure on a stronger adversary. This approach serves a dual purpose. It complicates India's strategic calculations and solidifies China's regional footprint through economic and military investments in Pakistan. It is a game of chess where each move is designed to India's ability to expand its influence. The psychological impact on India cannot be overstated. Facing coordinated, if covert, opposition from two of the world's most powerful nations forces India into a defensive posture. It must navigate a labyrinth of diplomatic isolation and proxy conflicts that slow its rise and sap its resources. The message is clear. No matter how much India grows, the powers that be will find ways to contain it. This fuels a cycle of mistrust and hostility that threatens to spiral into open conflict if not managed carefully. The strategic leverage gained by America and China through Pakistan is not about friendship or shared values. It is about power dynamics in a shared an era where control over the narrative equatorial and regional stability equates to survival. They have both chosen a path that pits India, its intention remains divided, its ambitions checked, and its rise in collective trail of the K-solace, its ambitions to straight, remembrance checked, and its rise braided. The unspoken truth is that neither Washington nor Beijing wants to face a dominant India unencumbered by regional tensions. This cold, calculated containment through Pakistan reflects a larger truth of international relations. Rising powers are rarely welcomed, they are resisted. The strategic alignment of America and China around Pakistan is a manifestation of this age-old pattern. India, to transcend this, must find strength not just in its military or economy, but in the resilience to withstand the pressures of global containment, to endure the efforts of two superpowers united in their fear of its rise. Pakistan's geopolitical position is a prize coveted not for its virtues, but for its unique capacity to serve as a strategic fulcrum, nestled at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East. Pakistan occupies a location that grants unparalleled influence over some of the most volatile and consequential regions on Earth. This territory is not merely a landmass. It is a gateway to critical trade routes, military corridors, and spheres of influence that neither America nor China can afford to lose control over. For global powers, Pakistan is a chessboard square that dictates the flow of power and control in a region marked by centuries of conflict and competition. The Arabian Sea coastline of Pakistan offers China a vital maritime access point through the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, an ambitious infrastructure project that is both a lifeline and a strategic artery for Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. This corridor bypasses the vulnerable Strait of Malacca, providing China with a more secure and shorter route for its energy supplies and trade goods. The geostrategic value of Gwadar Port is monumental. It serves as a physical and symbolic anchor of Chinese presence deep inside South Asia, projecting power in a region traditionally dominated by Indian influence. Control over this corridor through Pakistan allows China to exert pressure on India's western flank, a pressure point that can strain inability and maneuver freely both economically and militarily. For the United States, Pakistan's strategic utility lies in its proximity to Afghanistan and Iran, two nations pivotal to Washington's broader Middle East and Central Asia policies. The American withdrawal from Afghanistan did not diminish Pakistan's importance, it magnified it. Pakistan remains a key player in stabilizing or destabilizing the region, acting as a gatekeeper to the complex dynamics that define U.S. interests there. The country's ability to influence militant groups, control borders, and serve as a conduit for intelligence makes it a reluctant but necessary partner for America. Despite past betrayals and distrust, Washington views Pakistan's geographic position as indispensable for maintaining a foothold in a region critical to containing threats from terrorism, nuclear proliferation, and rival powers. Pakistan's military, though smaller than India's, holds a disproportionate influence because of its ability to project power along volatile borders and its military imperators and nuclear capability. Military presence around transforms Pakistan, this Amir Terra Trakistan, into a formidable actor from a miniature. It functions as a counterweight to India's dominance, that a symbol of resistance that both America and China can exploit. Pakistan's ability to sustain asymmetric warfare tactics serves as a tool of strategic disruption, ensuring India must constantly guard its western frontier. This ongoing tension limits India's capacity to focus entirely on its eastern or internal development ambitions, effectively fragmenting its strategic focus. The rugged terrain of the Himalayas, the strategic passes through the Karakoram Range, and the disputed Kashmir region all converge into a geopolitical puzzle where Pakistan's control or influence is a critical factor. These geographical realities ensure that Pakistan's position is not just advantageous, but essential for any power aiming to project influence over South Asia and beyond. It is not about friendship or ideology, but cold, hard calculations about access, control, and leverage. The significance of Pakistan's location also lies in its proximity to the energy, rich Central Asian republics. These landlocked nations hold vast reserves of oil and gas, resources desperately sought by China and the West. Pakistan's corridors potentially offer access routes that bypass hostile or unstable neighbors. For global powers, facilitating pipelines and trade routes through Pakistan reduces dependency on longer, more vulnerable pathways. Control over such routes translates and strategic power, politically strategic advantage, politically hatchered, strategic advantage. Thus, Pakistan's geographical and military significance is a linchpin in the global contest for supremacy. Neither the United States nor China champions Pakistan out of affection or shared values. They leverage it because it is the indispensable gateway to containing a rising India and controlling the flow of power in a region where every inch of land counts. Pakistan, despite its internal weaknesses, remains a vital strategic asset in the grand geopolitical game being played in 225. Hey, I'm here chatting with you directly, no watching or streaming from anywhere. But if you're looking for some epic content with Comet, like energy, powerful shares, or motivation that hits hard, just let me know what kind of videos or topics you want, and I can help create or find some awesome stuff for you. Also, if you want me to craft something like a hype YouTube intro or outro asking viewers to like, share, and subscribe, I can whip that up too. What vibe are you going for? India's foreign policy in recent years has carved a path that defies easy alignment with traditional power blocks. This independent streak unsettles global powers because it signals a refusal to be pigeonholed into the old Cold War binaries or subservient alliances. India's diplomatic moves are not accidental. They are a deliberate assertion of sovereignty and ambition. This autonomy challenges the dominance of Western influence, which for decades has shaped international relations through institutions, trade agreements, and military pacts. When a country of India's size and influence steps outside the orbit it stubborn control, it disrupts that its stackeniers in the threat allies have deep lines, Divid allegiance and dislition. The West's discomfort with India's independent foreign policy is rooted in fear of losing control over a critical node in the global network of alliances. India's partnerships are increasingly diverse and pragmatic, spanning Russia, Iran, and even countries traditionally viewed as adversaries by the West. This strategic pluralism erodes the effectiveness of Western attempts to contain rising powers by building exclusive coalitions. India refuses to be boxed in by ideological constraints or forced into a zero-sum game that benefits others at its expense. This attitude conveys a message of strength and resilience, signaling to the world that India will pursue its national interests of extern all else, regardless of external pressure. India's rejection of unconditional alignment with the West also threatens the strategic calculations that underpin many US-led initiatives in Asia. The Indo-Pacific strategy, designed to counterbalance China's rise, depends heavily on India's cooperation as a regional stabilizer and a bulwark against Beijing. Yet India's willingness to engage with China on multiple fronts and its refusal to fully commit to American frameworks reveal a more complex geopolitical reality. India seeks to balance competing interests rather than pick sides unequivocally insufficient by side on fronts, complicating the West's efforts to create a united front. This independent posture undermines the Western vision, control-nated, controllable alliance system in Asia. India's foreign policy also resonates as a challenge to the narratives that underpin Western global dominance. Its emphasis on South-South cooperation, championing of multilateral institutions outside Western control, and focus on economic sovereignty contest the narrative that Western-led globalization is the only legitimate path. India's engagement with the global South and emerging economies signals a shift toward a multipolar world where power is distributed more broadly and not monopolized by traditional Western powers. This shift threatens the legitimacy of Western hegemonic structures and calls into question the universality of their values and systems. India's diplomatic independence all confronts its global powers to influence the limits of coercion in the tune influence. It is one tune centuries. Economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and security guarantees lose potency when faced with a nation willing to diversify partnerships and assert national interests on its own terms. This reality forces the West and its allies to recalibrate strategies, often resorting to indirect methods such as empowering rivals like Pakistan to maintain leverage. The persistent support for Pakistan is less about friendship and more about managing India's rise by creating regional friction. The impact of India's independent foreign policy ripples far beyond South Asia. It signals a broader rejection of hierarchical international relations and a move toward a world where emerging powers craft their destinies without deference to established authorities. This paradigm shift fundamentally threatens the West's ability to dictate global agendas control trade routes, and maintain military dominance. The West's preference for Pakistan over India is a symptom of its deeper anxiety about losing control over a region vital to future economic growth and geopolitical stability. India's foreign policy independence is a beacon of assertiveness that breaks away from the shadows of old power structures. It compels established powers to devise new strategies, often involving proxies and regional complexities, to contain the rising force that refuses to be contained. This dynamic tension defines the evolving global order and reshapes the contours of power in 25 and beyond. The shadow of nuclear deterrence looms large over South Asia, transforming Pakistan from a regional actor into a formidable force no conventional power can ignore. This is not a matter of conventional military might alone, but the existential calculus imposed that nucleus of implodes or confrontation. The mere presence of the stakes of respect into re-presence, injecting a volatile mix of fear and respect in volatile deployment to fore. And the art is the maritable strative act out of diplomacy. America and China both recognize that Pakistan's nuclear capability is a critical lever in maintaining balance, preventing outright war, and forcing India to reconsider aggressive postures. This is power distilled to its rawest essence, where destruction on an unimaginable scale acts as the ultimate bargaining chip in the high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. Nuclear weapons are not just instruments of defense. They are strategic signals broadcast loud and clear to all who dare challenge Pakistan's sovereignty. The possession of these weapons creates a deterrence environment that shapes regional behavior, forcing India into a cautious stance despite its conventional superiority. It acts as a powerful psychological barrier that tempers India's ambitions and forces it to allocate resources to maintain parity, diverting focus and finances away from other critical fronts. Pakistan's nuclear program, shrouded in secrecy and strategic ambiguity, operates as a constant reminder that escalation carries unacceptable risks. This nuclear shadow compels the United States and China to maintain a delicate balance, treating Pakistan as a critical partner to avoid destabilizing the entire region. The global community's response to Pakistan's nuclear posture is marked by uneasy acceptance. Neither the US nor China seeks to isolate Pakistan completely, because such isolation could provoke dangerous escalation or uncontrolled escalation. Instead, both powers engage in cautious diplomacy, ensuring Pakistan remains within the realm of influence without triggering conflict. This balance of power is fragile, maintained by continuous dialogue, intelligence sharing, and calculated political maneuvers that acknowledge Pakistan's nuclear status as both a threat and a strategic asset. The nuclear dimension complicates any straightforward alliances or conflicts, creating a layered reality where Pakistan's role is indispensable for managing South Asia's fragile stability. Pakistan's nuclear arsenal also plays a pivotal role in its regional diplomacy, serving as both shield and sword. It empowers Pakistan to assert its interests forcefully in negotiations, territorial disputes, and strategic partnerships. This leverage grants Pakistan a degree of autonomy and influence disproportionate to its conventional military or economic capabilities. Pakistan's nuclear status forces India, and by extension its allies, to approach any conflict with heightened caution and calculated restraint. The specter of nuclear escalation limits the options for aggressive maneuvers, forcing a strategic stalemate where diplomacy and a proxy engagement become the primary tools of competition. This reality elevates Pakistan's importance in the eyes of global powers, who view it as a necessary participant in maintaining the precarious peace. The presence of nuclear weapons in Pakistan's arsenal demands that global powers tread carefully. The risk of miscalculation or escalation is not theoretical. It is a constant undercurrent shaping decisions at the highest levels of government. For the United States and China, the nuclear factor ensures that Pakistan remains a vital strategic asset, one that commands respect, constant engagement, and persistent investment. This reality elevates Pakistan's geopolitical value far beyond what its conventional metrics might suggest, making it an indispensable player in the quest to maintain a fragile balance of power in South Asia. In the end, Pakistan's nuclear capability is the ultimate force multiplier that compels global powers to align with it, not out of affection, but out of necessity. It shapes the strategic landscape, dictates the parameters of conflict and cooperation, and ensures Pakistan's central role in the geopolitical chess game of 25 and beyond. Pakistan's deep-rooted intelligence and covert operations capabilities carve a unique niche in the global power struggle, elevating the country far beyond its economic or conventional military stature. These shadowy forces operate in realms invisible to the public eye, but vital to the strategic calculations of the world's greatest powers. The ability to influence, destabilize, and shape outcomes through covert means gives Pakistan a leverage that commands attention from both the United States and China. This intelligence edge is not merely a tool of national security, but a weapon of geopolitical manipulation, wielded with precision to serve broader strategic interests. The intricacies of Pakistan's intelligence interests are intertwined with its history of asymmetric conflict, allows particularly against India. This expertise allowed Pakistan to conduct adverations that can disrupt adversary without escalating adverations to fill out of the full-scale war. The effectiveness of these covert actions forces India to divide its attention and resources between conventional defense and counterintelligence efforts, weakening its ability to project power regionally. America and China recognize that Pakistan's intelligence capabilities act as a force multiplier, amplifying its influence far beyond its physical boundaries. This recognition drives their support, ensuring that Pakistan remains equipped and motivated to play its critical role. Pakistan's intelligence services also serve as critical conduits for international alliances, managing delicate relationships with non-state actors and regional groups whose influence extends beyond borders. These networks provide avenues for indirect engagement in conflicts and crises that shape regional stability. For global powers, partnering with Pakistan's intelligence community offers access and influence in regions where direct involvement may be politically or militarily untenable. This covert collaboration forms a hidden architecture of influence, allowing the United States and China to project power with plausible deniability and strategic flexibility. The shadows cast by Pakistan's intelligence activities are long and complex, influencing everything from counterterrorism operations to diplomatic negotiations. These clamptives and outcomes before shape narratives even out begins. The arsabrus for happable diplomacy even begins. The strategic ambiguity maintained by Pakistan's intelligence community keeps adversaries uncertain and cautious, a psychological edge that is invaluable in international relations. This fog of uncertainty forces India and others to operate defensively, constrained by the fear of unseen threats and unpredictable consequences. The intelligence game Pakistan plays is a high-stakes contest where knowledge equates to power and silence can be louder than guns. Moreover, Pakistan's covert capabilities give it a bargaining chip in international diplomacy. that cannot be matched by conventional means alone. These hidden assets allow Pakistan to negotiate from a global strength in ways that often escape public scrutiny, The delicate balance maintained through intelligence, sharing agreements, covert operations, and strategic silence underscores Pakistan's importance as a partner, despite its internal challenges. For America and China, this intelligence dimension offers a lever to contain India's influence and shape outcomes favorable to their interests without the need for overt confrontation. Pakistan's intelligence prowess is a decisive factor that ensures it remains indispensable to global power calculations. This unseen strength commands respect, fear, and cautious collaboration from America and China alike. It amplifies Pakistan's strategic relevance as cements its position as a linchpin in the complex geopolitical landscape of South Asia, where every mood in the caudos, etos of Powerly in the corridors of power. The world doesn't bend to wishful thinking. It bends to power. Power rooted not in brute force alone, but in strategy, resolve, and the unyielding will to shape one's destiny. America and China's choice to side with Pakistan is not a fleeting alliance. It is a calculated embrace of complexity, a recognition of raw geopolitical reality. Understanding this is not about taking sides, but about grasping the ruthless clarity with which the modern world operates. In this arena, power respects power, and those who fail to see this are destined to be spectators in a game they once believed they controlled.